Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. Greetings, Power of Owning Your Career podcast listeners. My name is Simone Morris, and I'm the host of the show. If you're in the United States, this week is Thanksgiving, and it's got me in a reflective state of mind of, how many things am I grateful for? And I want to start us off in this episode, really reading you something from the 52 Tips for Owning Your Career book. It's a chapter on self-care, and I talk about taking care of yourself. Tip number 46, that is, treat yourself well. This journey requires stamina. Be kind to yourself. There are disappointments, rejections. Find the outlet that helps you to bounce back when you get no answers. Suspend judgment of yourself. In other words, give yourself grace. Fuel up. You will need it. Take advantage of opportunities to sleep. That's an important one, listeners. As Thanksgiving is upon us, I am going to take the opportunity to sleep, because when you're going really strong in your career and you're required to give so much, meaning you have so many audiences, so many collaborators, and you are just pouring out, at some point you're going to hit E. I like to say BE on your tank, and you need to really fuel up so that you're ready for what's ahead to close out 2021, and you're ready for what's ahead to soar in your career in 2022. So fuel up, listeners. You will need it. Take advantage of opportunities to sleep. If you're not getting your 7 hours, invest in finding out what's your sleep block. Do not ignore this problem. It might take some time, but fix whatever is bothering you so you can get back to your sleep. And what comes to mind for me right there is I'm thinking of Tara Clancy. She has a podcast about sleep. I want to take some time this Thanksgiving break to listen to her podcast, because I need to sleep. I don't know about you listeners, but I know that my brain just keeps going. As soon as I lay down, there are a million ideas for me of what I want to do in my business, what I want to do in my career, what I want to do with family, where I want to go on vacation. And so it takes me like a good hour before I'm able to settle down. Even though I'm laying down saying I want to get to sleep and get my 7 hours or 8 hours if I'm lucky. At any rate, I do have some good practices of getting up and writing down what I want to do so that it's out of my brain and on paper, and I don't forget when I wake up in the morning. But it's really important to get that sleep in. And again, like I said, Tara Clancy, I get her email communications, and she does a good job. She's an expert in the area of sleep. So check that out if you will. So this seems like a no-brainer, but I can tell you it's often forgotten. Where are you on your list? Are you at the top or are you at the bottom because of the plethora of responsibilities under your remit? Exactly what I was saying before. You must fill your tank so that you can drive the distance. And while you're at it, fill it with premium octane so you can move the distance in a good way, in a smooth way. I've operated on empty many times, so I know it's not a great feeling. You will notice if you're constantly drained, because your attitude will be affected, attitude and as well as energy. You will be short-tempered and easily irritated. You will have difficulty concentrating. You will feel tired, or the opposite, wired, and perhaps experiencing insomnia. Exactly what I just talked about. My good friend Ingrid, who's a nutritionist, she schooled me about the term adrenal fatigue. you might have that. So you want to check out the book Adrenal Fatigue by James L. Wilson as a resource. Heck, you might even want to call Ingrid for a free consultation. Her website is fullnutrition.com. Another tip that I will mention here is tip 47, find your peace. Find your peace. Is it meditation? Is it yoga? What gives you great joy? Find it and keep doing it. Let it be your go-to when you're feeling depleted. I know that this is a no-brainer, but oftentimes we forget about what really gives us joy. I'm going to give you permission to go back to those places to ensure your happy tank is filled up. And one strategy that I use for finding peace and listening to my gut feelings is listening to my gut feelings. They are a beacon to highlight whether your life is off kilter. Grant yourself permission to do what gives you peace continually. So again, as I gear up for Thanksgiving, there's making sure you fuel up your tank, tip 1, making sure you find your peace. It is so important for the work that we have to do, and being happy in our careers, to really leaning into peaceful moments, leaning into peaceful people that you surround yourself with, so that, you know, the journey can be difficult, but we want it to be a fun, peaceful, happy journey with results. Tip number 48, give yourself playtime. Don't lose sight that you're entitled to have fun in your career and life. Truly, you can be so focused on your goals that you're missing out on fun. Find a way to incorporate fun into your career goals. My daughter, who is now 6, she's teaching me how to play again. And honestly, I have forgotten how to play. I'm not kidding, listeners. I'm telling you, because I'm so busy working and doing, that I forget to have fun. But I am learning. This past weekend, we went to the movie theater. My idea, I want to let you know, we went to the movie theater and bought a big tub of popcorn. Now, because of COVID, we really have not been going out. We still have not gone back to the movies. We've been watching a lot of movies at home. So we went to the theater, got a big bucket of popcorn. My idea, it was a cold evening and everyone was in that bucket. And it was so much fun for me. It was really simple, but fun. And so I promised my daughter this morning, I'm like, hey, do you want to get popcorn again tonight? And she's like, yes. She's all amped up. So I have a feeling popcorn is in my future tonight, and in the future as well. And that, you know, it's something that is a treat. And it's like playtime for me, because it really reminds me of being in the movies. We do fight over whether we're watching continuous cartoons. Luckily, we're getting in the American Ninja and The Voice, you know, some adult television, because my daughter is 6, and so she owns the TV. So it's a constant fight. So I think that with the popcorn, I can sway her to move towards at least American Ninja for us to watch. But anyway, back to the tip at hand. It's about having playtime. My daughter has me doing puzzles. I was doing Lego. And so just, you know, expand your imagination, lean into playtime, the opportunity to frolic. How wonderful it has been for me to revisit the childlike mindset where you're staved off worrying about your career and life. Feels like a good time as we lean into the new year, almost new year, and the closing of this year. I actually just completed the My Life, My Way retreat, which was fabulous. Worked on vision boards, designing them in Canva. And Canva is a tool that you can use. Designed it in Canva, and then took that as an input to really come up with goals for the coming year. But before that, we did a series of exercises of answering questions about, you know, what are you most proud of that you've accomplished in your career in the current year? What do you want to celebrate? What are the lessons learned that you want to take from the current year, 2021? What are those lessons? Oftentimes we have lessons, but we don't stop to really ingest the lesson and define how we will move forward because of the lesson. So I want you, if you haven't done it, and this breaking period or this weekend, if you're listening to it, take some time to really think about the current year and to think about the lessons from the current year, to think about what you want to do differently. How do you want to fill up your tank differently? How do you want to play differently? I know I'm already thinking about vacationing differently in 2022, working differently, working smarter. And so I want you to think about those times. So check your life for that matter. I remember the word well-rounded. We want a well-rounded student, a well-rounded employee. And the meaning behind this was that they wanted somebody who had varied experiences. So I want you to have varied experiences in your life and not to have your wheel be lopsided. In the coaching world, the wheel of life is a tool that's used to look at your life and ensure that you're not limping along. The analogy is to a tire where your tire won't run smoothly if there's an area lacking attention. As women, it can be tough to find balance as motherhood enters the equation. And I just in general, there are so many pulls, as I was saying in the beginning of the episode, so many pulls on us that we are challenged in just sustaining our energy and sustaining relationships and being everything to everyone. So it's just so important to check your tire, fuel up, to find your peace. These are all self-care things that you can do. And of course, there are more tips in the book, 52 Tips for Owning Your Career, that you can read. As I wrap up this episode, I want to think about what I'm grateful for in this podcast. Number one, first of all, did you know that there are 124 episodes? That's right. There are 124 episodes that I have recorded for the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I want to let you know that we are coming up on the anniversary of the podcast. It is going to be 3 years old on December 17, 2021. And that's so exciting for me. I cannot believe that I have been doing this podcast for 3 years. I have learned so much from this opportunity. One thing that I'm grateful for is the opportunity to constantly be in a state of learning. I find from the episodes that I'm constantly encouraged by these different stories that the leaders bring to the podcast. There's always similarities in terms of how they approach career success, but there's also differences, and there are different resources that are shared. And so, I mean, you can just go back through these 124 episodes and get out a notepad and start writing down the lessons and how you want to apply it to your career, and think about accountability. How do you want to hold yourself accountable for the lessons that you're taking from the podcast to move forward? These are all important things, and things that I'm so grateful for. I'm grateful for the fact that the podcast has been around for 3 years. I'm grateful for the fact that I've recorded 124 episodes. Amazing. I'm grateful for the fact that I've met so many amazing leaders. And for me, I'm an introvert. So if you're an introvert and just, you hate networking, a podcast may be in your future in the coming year, because it's a great way to network with others without the title or the laborious title of networking. Oh, it's so hard. But it really is just building relationships with people. And I have been delighted by the many people that I've met as a result of recording this podcast. So I want to encourage you, if this is something that you've been thinking about doing, go forward, give it a try. You don't have to be perfect. I'm sure if I listen to episode 1, I'll go, that does not sound good. But anyway, I continue to move forward, and I want to encourage you to do something that you've been thinking about doing. Go ahead and do it. I listened to Joel Osteen, an episode on Joel Osteen's podcast this morning, and he talked about really, you still should. So to offset those, the pesky inner critic or noise that you're hearing, saboteur in the coaching world language, of going forward with dreams that you have for yourself in your career, he said you still should, despite the many excuses or reasons you come up with for not doing things, you still should. And so I want to encourage you to do that. I want to let you know that I'm grateful for your support. I'm grateful for you listening to the podcast, subscribing to the podcast, sharing the podcast, and leaving a review. Those are important. When you leave reviews, it's a gift for me to know that you're enjoying the volunteer work. I like to say volunteer because this podcast has not been fully monetized. So it's really a passion project for me. And I enjoy giving you resources to stay in the driver's seat, my friends. Stay in the driver's seat for your career, because very easily you can lose that position. And I want you to be intentional about being in the driver's seat for your career. I want to leave you with my sincerest gratitude that you're listening to the podcast and you continue to listen to it. I hope that you will go back through those 124 episodes and get at least 1 to 3 lessons that you can apply directly to your career. Follow us on social media. Come join us in the LinkedIn group, which, is an opportunity to have direct access to me for conversation, follow up after the podcast, and also the opportunity to connect with past guests to talk about their episode. And lastly, if you want to have a career breakthrough conversation as you move towards 2022, love that. Love all those twos as you move towards 2022 and you want to, do something different in your career, catapult it, show up differently. I'm the person to connect with. I'm a career coach and podcast host and all things and chief driver seat officer, like that too. So you can go to careerbreakthroughcall.com and schedule a complimentary call with me to have a conversation about your career and how I can help you level up in your career. For those in the US, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Actually, this episode is coming out after Thanksgiving, so I hope that you had a wonderful break, a wonderful holiday, and a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanks so much for continuing to listen to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. This is Simone Morris, your host and friend and Chief Driver Seat Officer, signing off. Have a great day, everyone. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.